Hey friend, welcome. I'm so excited to have you here listening to another episode of the Pattern Design Circle podcast. Here we talk all about the ins and outs of designing knit and crochet patterns and running a business that makes it all possible. I'm Jessica, your host, knitting pattern designer, design mentor, and the friend in your ear. Can't wait to dive right in. The Pattern Design Circle podcast is sponsored by the Pattern Design Circle, a membership community for knit and crochet pattern designers that are feeling lost, lonely, or frustrated in their business. It connects you with a supportive community that's always eager to answer your questions and help you through the hard times. And there's loads of resources and activities specifically catered to business and designing. Sound like your jam? Check it out at snickerdoodleknits.com/design-circle. That's snickerdoodle, like the cookie, knits, knits.com/design-circle. All right, let's get into it. Hello. Welcome back to another episode of Pattern Design Circle podcast. And as always, I'm excited to be here in your ear chatting all things business, designing, creative life, all of the things. I'm super passionate about really bringing everything together in a way that feels authentic and purposeful and meaningful and intentional so that we are loving these creative businesses that we create and not pushing ourselves into boxes that don't make sense. So I recently started kind of this series of podcast episodes here where I am sharing content that I have found inspiring, motivational from creators outside the knitting and crochet industry and talking about how they apply to us because we are all creative business owners. So today's episode, I am sharing about an interview that was on the Colin and Samir show YouTube channel, and featuring Max Fosh. So Max is a pretty big deal in the YouTube world, and Colin and Samir are as well. So they tend to talk, at least that's the videos that I've watched from Colin and Samir, they tend to talk with creative business owners, and they chat kind of about a lot of the things that we talk about here on this podcast. So, yeah, I just have some notes that I took on my phone while I was listening and watching their video and want to chat through it. And I hope that it really motivates and inspires you as a creative business owner looking at things maybe from a different lens. So one thing that I really loved, and I know that I've shared this with some folks in real life, just in conversation, talking about business and creativity and all of the things. They talked about, and this is probably mostly Max's responses to them. I didn't write down in my notes who said what, but shared that there are really kind of two metrics for success as creative businesses. One metric is if you enjoyed the project, if you enjoyed the thing that you were working on. The second metric is the money, the finances. And it is easy as a business owner, maybe listening to other business owners that aren't in a creative industry, to feel like this metric of your passion, your joy, whether you're actually loving what you're doing, it can feel like that isn't as important of a metric, and that what you're supposed to focus on is the money. Or there can also be this idea that if you focus on what you're passionate about, that the money will automatically come. And those aren't necessarily true. So something that was really interesting to me was that they shared, if you are working on a project and when you've completed it, you loved it, have already succeeded. Like, you've already completed that metric of success that you enjoyed it. And then the financial success or lack of success, like that's separate. That's like um you've been successful in that project because you enjoyed it. If you're financially successful, that is kind of like a cherry on top, but it is still a successful project if it's something that you really loved. I loved that perspective. Um, and well, I guess maybe the way if my paraphrasing of my notes is more accurate, the way that they said it is if you enjoyed it, you've already guaranteed a success, even if it doesn't financially succeed. Like you've already you've already locked in success there. And this is part of why, like I feel like it's so important to talk about our definition of success, right? Because if we're for as a creative, if we are just defining success as financial success, then it's not going to feel aligned. It's not like as creatives, we are doing this because we are creatives. We are doing this because it is something we are passionate about. It is something that lights us up. It's something that we really want to love, right? There are a lot of ways to make money that aren't going to be the thing that light you up. So I feel like this creative aspect, this passion aspect, really ought to be included in all of our definitions of success if we are passion, creative, artistic driven at all. Um, and the reason I say that, I mean, like I always say, don't listen to shoulds and have tos and need tos and all of those things. But as creatives, I really do believe that that helps us feel more fulfilled if we are ensuring we are keeping that in the equation, that what you are doing is something that you really enjoy. Um, and then they shared that like long term, what matters most is if you enjoy it. Like when you look back at a project, I've been going through, so I don't know, I have no idea when this episode's going to release because this is a passion thing right now. I've been really inspired by a lot of these things that I've been listening to, watching, wanting to share them with you. And I have not planned out how it fits into the content that I am going to be sharing here on the podcast. But right now, I have been going through a lot of my old designs, all of my existing designs, pattern designs with Snickerdoodle knits because this month, it's April right now, is like my design anniversary time. And so I'm going back and showcasing, all of the designs from each year and all of these things. And the things that I associate with those designs are, like the emotional, what was really meaningful about it. What parts of it are people that I collaborated with. Parts of it are the sentiment, the symbolism that I have in the designs. Parts of it are the design process. Parts of it might be people that I met through that, maybe in test knitting or whatever. Those are the things that I still associate with those projects. I don't remember, I mean, like I go back to my numbers, so I do remember some of it, but like that's what really I associate those projects with. I do know some of the numbers of like what's been more successful or whatever, but that isn't long term when we're looking back. Um, it's that what actually was meaningful, what was something that actually lit me up and even still lights me up looking at those projects, looking at those things that I've created, those things that you feel proud about that you're actually excited to share with the world. So long term, as creatives, it tends to be that what we feel matters most is that enjoyment metric, not that financial success metric. And it's tricky because so often we tend to compare ourselves to other people. And what we have to compare ourselves is numbers, right? So if you have an idea of financial success, but also like vanity metrics of how many followers they have, how many subscribers they have. all of those things, how much engagement they have on their content. Um, but this goes back to an episode that I actually just recorded, but probably you received a few weeks ago, on how are we defining productivity? How are we defining what is actually, like success in our business and doing things that are really meaningful. Um, and so something that I'll say, probably most of this is not word for word. It's probably more abbreviated, but or summarized. Um, but one thing that they shared was that a quick path to a short career is letting go of the joy for the sake of metrics. And from what I've witnessed in other creative business owners, from what I've experienced for myself as a creative business owner, I can agree that this is often the case. That when we start to worry more about the metrics than we do about our joy, that leads to a whole lot of burnout. That leads to a whole lot of not feeling fulfilled in our business. That leads to a whole lot of lack of joy, lack of peace, lack of passion, um, and even kind of like some bitterness and resentment towards our work or our industry or our business. And that, like, as creatives, we need to, I say need as like something that we feel instinctually. Um, we desire this, just this joy, this sense of fulfillment, this passion, this what lights us up. And if you throw that to the curb, it feels very meaningless. It feels very passionless. It The numbers just aren't enough. They just aren't what we're looking for. They aren't the reason we started it, and they're not going to be the thing that keeps us going. I do think that there are some exceptions where people are maybe more business minded than the creative minded. And so even if they're in a creative industry, like they don't care if they're like 100% loving what they're doing. Like they're like, I'm doing this because it's a business and like I'm gonna do what it takes to. That's a thing too. I do think. Um, so anyway, don't let your joy go to the wayside. Don't let alignment and intentionality go to the wayside. Keep those things important. Keep those things like right in front of you. Keep them in your forefront. Like as you're planning, as you're following through with tasks, all of those things. Don't let go of that joy. And then something else that they talked about that I always love when I hear the reminder. Um, and actually, I saw it on an Instagram reel yesterday. So I watched these YouTube videos like a few weeks ago, but I just saw an Instagram reel yesterday with the same message, and I sent it to a mastermind of some other business owners that I'm in. I was like, always love this reminder. Here's the reminder for you too. But that is that as creatives, we tend to learn from our failures and not from our successes. We use success as an excuse to keep doing what we're doing. So if it's working, like why change? Why like just keep doing it, right? But when you fail, there is a lot you can learn from that. There are things you can learn about what works and doesn't work. There are things you can learn about yourself. There are things you can learn about your own voice, about your own brand, about the way that you want to show up in the world. If you have instant success and you're showing up in a way that's not aligned and authentic, you're going to feel like you might have to keep following that path, right? But having failures gives us more room to change and to adjust and to adapt and to learn and to grow and to evolve. And like there's so much we learn from failures. Like even if like thinking about feedback that we get, constructive criticism, people that are sharing like, hey, this isn't a super great way to do this. This isn't, this is really confusing. This comes across in this way that, whatever. If those people didn't share those things and you just kept doing them, you wouldn't learn, right? I was just thinking earlier today about one of my early designs where I want my designs, I want people to feel like they can use any yarn when they knit my designs. I want people to feel like they can use box store yarn and not feel guilty or feel shamed or anything like that. So I have what I have for my designs is I have a blog post that gives yarn recommendations that are at different price points, typically lower than the yarn that I originally used for the project for the pattern. But with this shawl that I had designed, I had, it was very early on in my designing. I had put like those yarn recommendations as well on the pattern listing on Ravelry. And I had done 4, 5, maybe like 5 collaborations before this, and must have done the same thing. And nobody had said anything. But then this yarn dyer, I publish it, and I had collaborated with her, and she had provided the yarn support for this, and she's like, "Hey, this isn't cool." I don't remember how she said it at all. Uh, and I do know, like my initial response was like, "I'm just trying my best," not what I said to her, but like my reaction was a little bit defensive and um, a little bit maybe embarrassed for feeling called out, but um, something that that's something that I tie with that design is that I love so much that she was willing to say something to me and that she was kind about it. Like she was she wasn't angry at me. She wasn't, all the things, but she shared and um her perspective as a yarn dyer, and that informed, what I did moving forward. I changed it, I fixed the mistake, I learned from it. If she had never said something, um, and if other yarn dyers had never said something, I could be building this reputation of being somebody super disrespectful to yarn dyers. I would have no idea. I would have never learned from my mistake and just continued to perpetuate the same thing. So, um, I will not say that it's easy to fail. It's not easy to learn our mistakes, but it is important, and it's so important for growing um, into just kind of better people and better business owners and better artists. Yeah. So don't, again, this is easier said than done. Um, Try to not fear failure, and try to not be hard on yourself when you do experience what you deem to be failure. Also, try to pay attention to what you did get it out of it, what was positive from it, what was an enjoyable experience from it, as well as then, all right, how can I prevent this in the future? What can I do to make this experience better for myself, for the collaborator, for my customers, whatever it is. Um, yeah. And then the other parts of this, I feel like are maybe a little bit off topic, but I'll go ahead and share them since I wrote them down, and maybe it is because it's something that you needed to hear, or you wanted to hear, or you are going to find valuable. So, um, as creatives, which is something that I've talked about several times, as creatives, we often need constraints. Um, and here they were talking about something like the pandemic, something big that kind of gets us out of our routine, or our like kind of stuck in a rut. Um, uh, that helps us kind of get out of that, get out of ourselves, our comfort zone, our routine. Um, and gives us something else and a different kind of environment or a different kind of constraint that helps us to be more creative, to think about things a little bit differently, to see things from a different perspective. Um, and then the other one that I had written down to share was that something that can be helpful just in building a creative business is to have topics. So like it might be your project, it might be your brand pillars, brand foundation kind of stuff. Have topics that are easy for people to share with others. So like if they're wanting to talk about, or if they're talking about a topic and they want to bring you up, or they're like, oh, this is a person who does what you're looking for, or this is a really great example of XYZ. Have topics that makes it easy for people to talk about you. So have you seen the person who creates videos that XYZ? Have you seen the video with the person who does ABC? So one of my maybe the first example that comes to mind is that there is somebody who has created, she's a sock knitter, she loves sock knitting, she loves teaching sock knitting, and she has several videos on YouTube that are all, it's like a sock knitting class. It's like guiding people through sock knitting and giving them all sorts of tips and tricks. So when somebody mentions that, hey, they've been trying to figure out how to knit socks, or they're wanting to learn socks, or they're feeling intimidated by knitting socks, or they're looking for somebody who can help them knit socks, she is the person that I think of because it's very easy to kind of describe what she does and how that's a good fit for what they're looking for. That doesn't mean that's all she does, but it's this topic that is easy to kind of share, right? So use that as inspiration, I guess. However, makes sense for you if you want to. I do know that as creatives, there is also always this kind of like tug and pull when it comes to niching, right? And I think it's important to not niche yourself into a box that doesn't feel like you. And at the same time, I do know from a branding marketing perspective that it can be really helpful to niche. Sometimes I think niching doesn't necessarily look like if you're feeling resistance towards identifying your niche or to being in a niche, I have a feeling that it is because you're just not thinking of niching in the same way. You might feel like niching means you have to work with super bulky yarn from a certain brand, or maybe you feel like niching means you have to only do lace or you have to only do socks. A lot of times niching actually can have a lot to do with who we are as a person and how we show up as a brand. It might be as simple as having this really vibrant brand that stands out in a very particular way, or a really calming brand, or a really inspirational brand. It might be because you are a homesteader style. Is that what we call it these days? I don't know. That feels like it's like from the 1700s. Um, like like the farm style kind of folks. Um, that's a niche. Uh, and so now I'm going on a whole other tangent about niches and marketing, but really being mindful of what makes you different, what really kind of summarizes your passions, your interests, kind of summarizes, oftentimes for us as personal brands, summarizes who you are as a person, that can be your niche. That's okay. But and then you can talk about it as such. You don't have to say, I'm the sock knitter, I'm the lace knitter, I'm the cable knitter. But you can say, I'm the person who really loves to talk about being authentic and aligned, and having intentionality in creative business and life in general. Oh, that's me. Like that that encompasses a lot of things, right? I can talk about creativity, I can talk about business, I can talk about marketing, I can talk about habits in life in general. But it still is something very specific that I am really passionate about. And that's kind of what the Pattern Design Circle brand is all about. So um yeah. Alrighty. So that was my notes from that interview with Colin and Samir on the Colin Samir show with Max Fosh, but really paying attention to what is really important to you as a creative, what is really lighting you up. Don't let somebody convince you that your passion isn't an important part of your business. Don't let somebody convince you that your joy isn't an important part of your business. Don't let somebody convince you that you can make the money now and figure out the joy later. Don't let somebody push you into a box that is not a box that you want to be in. Don't let somebody push you into a box that you're going to be miserable in. Have those metrics of success. Remember that enjoying a project is a success. Remember that having failures actually is a success because it's teaching you things. And just cling to your creativity. Not in like a way that you suffocate it, but in a way that you don't let go of it, that you don't let all of the things of business and marketing and all of the things that kind of can sweep you away and make you feel burnt out. You don't have to do that. Like it is possible to have a creative business that you love, that lights you up. And as we've talked before, that might your path, all of our paths, all of our journeys, all of our timelines are unique. They will look different. Don't compare yourself to somebody else, where they're at, what they've done, what they've accomplished, but pay attention to your dream, your passion, what's important to you, and follow that. That's something that sure I can absolutely help you with. Like I love to help in one-on-one coaching to help folks kind of identify and find what they really love and then help them create a strategy that they're going to enjoy. But ultimately, it comes down to you. You have to be comfortable with identifying what's important to you. Like I can help pull it out, but I still have to, like make sure that that feels good with you, right? So like the most important thing is this personal work of being honest with yourself and being open with yourself and acknowledging this is something that lights me up. This is something that doesn't. This is something that I have a limiting belief around. This is something that I want to work on. This is something that didn't go well, but this is how I can change it. Like all those things that we can be honest about with ourselves that will help us grow into that future version of who you want to be, what you want your business to look like. Alrighty, I hope you find this inspirational and helpful, and I will chat with you on the next episode. Wow, thanks so much for listening to this episode. If you found it valuable, please share the podcast with a designer friend. And if you have a minute, leave a review. It's so helpful for me and means the world to me. Chat soon.